Oh, come on, man.
Come on, man. Come on, man.
You are so immature. Hey, it is good to be with you this morning. Before we get going, I want to say, did Pastor Dave and Pastor Scott just absolutely knock it out of the park the last 3 weeks? I was just absolutely amazing. If you were not able to be here for the Pursue Surrender series, I want to strongly encourage, exhort, guilt, whatever it takes, for you to go either to our church app or our website or the podcast. It was an incredible series based on Mark 5. I'd encourage you to be a part of that, take that in if you weren't able to be here. I'd like to welcome you here. Those of you in Skagit, it was so great being with you last weekend and earlier in the summer. It's always a fun time to be down there. And those of you in Boca Raton, thank you for joining us. Very excited because I got tickets this week and I'm going to see you in November, get to meet you, and we're really excited to be able to connect that way. And hey, look, they're clapping for me to come to Florida. I like this. So since you're so excited about that, how about should we send me to Hawaii too? I mean, pretty excited about me getting out of town. I'm not sure how to take that. But anyway, glad that you're here, and I'm very excited about this new series that we're starting today. There was an event that took place very recently that for some people is a very important and significant event that brings about incredible joy and delight. In fact, some of these people would say that this event that happened just within the last couple of weeks would be like as refreshing as a soaking rain after a very long drought. It just breathes life into them. What's fascinating to me is that the exact same event that happened a couple of weeks ago can bring about a diametrically opposed response from some other people, sometimes in the same home, same family, same marriage. In fact, they would say, no, this doesn't bring me joy, it brings me dread. They wouldn't call it the refreshing rain showers. They would feel like what happened just a couple of weeks ago would be like the early contractions of a long, laborious delivery for the next 5 to 6 months. The event of which I speak that brings great joy and great dread is the preseason of the NFL. All right. So we see that we have a little of both here. I understand that. But as the Bible would say, yea, verily, football. So there is a corresponding event that will happen in a couple of weeks that is related as well. And tell me if this is not music to your ears. All right, here, what are we talking about with that song? Monday Night Football. All right, now my day off, many of you know, is Monday, and there's nothing better to end a perfect day off than with Monday Night Football. I absolutely love it, and sometimes I get so excited about it, I'll go in the afternoon and start watching the pregame show. Now, in the Monday Night Football pregame show, there's a segment they do just prior to the kickoff, which has become the title of this series. Now, in this segment, they will take the lowlights of the week before, the dumb, stupid, foolish, ignorant moves, plays that the players have done, and sometimes the coaches' calls that they have made. They will expose them, they will remember them, they will highlight them. These are the kind of things that are very often very costly to the team. Maybe it would, later in the season, maybe even cost them a playoff berth, may have cost them a win. These kind of plays that when you watch it, you just scratch your head, and the only response you can have is, okay, some of you obviously work on Mondays and haven't had a chance to see this. Yeah, the only response is, come on, man, what were you thinking? Come on, man, seriously? Come on, man, really? Come on, man, how much do they pay you? Come on, man. And it's like, man, it just is utter disgust. And I think if the NFL were to tag this segment with a Bible verse, and I know that's a stretch, but if they were, they'd probably go to the book of Proverbs, where we've become very familiar with this. There's a way that seems right to a man. But in the end, it's like, come on, man. Or maybe they go back a little bit earlier, Proverbs 12, where it says, the way of a fool seems right to him. It's just like, come on, man. Now, honestly, how many of you have ever watched a play in football and you thought, you wouldn't say it out loud, but we're in church, so you're going to be honest and vote with a show of hands. You've watched it and you thought, I could do better than that. All right, yeah, okay. Yeah, of course. It's like, come on, man. Now, here's the truth. The come on, man experiences are not relegated just to the NFL. They happen in life. They happen in my life. They've happened in your life. And I think if we were willing to be honest and vulnerable and transparent, that every single one of us, tell me if you agree or not, every single one of us could give some come on, man, from our experience. Am I right? From our life, there's been something. We look back and we think, come on, man, what were you thinking? What's going on there? That date you went on, it's like, come on, man. That party you went to, what was I thinking? Come on, man. That business, that lease that I signed, what was I thinking? That debt that I went into, that business partner that I joined up with, that marriage, what was I thinking? That divorce, what was I thinking? Those words, that response, that anger, what was I? Come on, man. We have these come on, man experiences in our life. These things that we do when we look back and we think, man, I wish I wouldn't have done that. Now, here's the great thing about the Bible, is that the Bible is filled with the record of individuals' lives, people like us, people created in the image of God, people called by God, gifted by God, empowered by God, used by God, chosen by God, and yet even these people, these heroes of the faith, these people just like us, they have come on, man experiences in their life. And the Bible doesn't sugarcoat them, doesn't edit them out, leaves them out there for us to examine even thousands of years later. So my thinking on this whole series is that we would look at some of the stories, some of the life choices, some of the events that happened in some of these individuals. Now, I will say this. If we were to try to cover every come on man story in the Bible, this series would go on for a lot of years. So we're not going to do that. We're just going to be, for 3 weeks, we're going to look at some individuals' lives. And one more, isn't it true that it's easier to spot the faults in someone else than in ourselves? So we're just going to rip these guys apart. Okay. But when we do, keep in mind we're looking in a mirror. Now here's kind of the principle of what we're talking about with this whole deal, and we'll see it today and in the ensuing weeks, is that decisions are often made with a stopwatch. Decisions made with a stopwatch, but the consequences are measured with a calendar. That we make some decision in the moment. Right now, we think it's an isolated event. It's just for this point. And it's just this stopwatch decision. But like a rock thrown into a pond, the waves begin to ripple out. And sometimes the effects, sometimes the consequences, sometimes the results of that one decision made in that moment are marked with calendars, months, years, even generations. And we look back and think, oh, I wish I could redo that. I wish I could take that one back. So we're going to look at three of these guys. Tullian Tchividjian, who's a senior pastor of Coral Ridge Presbyterian Church, he said, the negative examples in the Bible are given to us so that we can see ourselves. And my prayer has been this: as we look objectively at someone else's come on man experience, that we would have the wisdom, the discernment, the courage to see in ourselves maybe that same tendency and learn from that person so that we don't have to make those kind of mistakes in the future. So that we can have a reduced amount of come on man moments for the remainder of our life. So today we're going to start off. If you have your Bible or your phone or your tablet, you can turn to Genesis chapter 25. We're going to look at a story of two brothers and one individual in here who has a real come on man moment. It's a story that some of you are very familiar with. Some of you maybe have never heard this story, but we're gonna look at this story of these two guys. Genesis chapter 25. You might even know their grandfather. This is the account of Abraham, his grandfather, Abraham's son Isaac. Abraham became the father of Isaac, so Isaac's born here. And Isaac was 40 years old when he married Rebekah, which is amazing. We just covered 40 years. Time flies when you're in the Word. It's amazing here. So Isaac's born, and now he's the 40-year-old virgin, we're assuming, and he gets married to Rebekah. So now we've got Abraham's son Isaac, not Ishmael, that's his half-brother, but Isaac and his wife Rebekah. Go on to the next verse, and it says, Isaac prayed to the Lord on behalf of his wife because she was barren. The Lord answered his prayer, and his wife Rebekah became pregnant. I read a verse like this, and I think, I wish I could pray like the Bible guys. You know, they pray and God answers, just like that. His wife can't have kids. He prays, wham, bam, thank you, the great I am, and she's pregnant, just like that. Well, what we find out later is that actually this is a 20-year verse. From where we just left off, they got married when he's 40. This happens 20 years later. So if some of you have been praying for something for a while and you're thinking, why doesn't God answer my prayer like he did it in the Old Testament? Maybe he is. He just got another 12 years to wait, that's all. So 20 years they're praying, 20 years they're fasting, 20 years they're pleading with God. All we want is a child, all we want is a family, all we want is kids. And as we've talked about, in that culture, for a woman to be barren, the amount of disgrace, the amount of shame that she would carry, seen as a curse, the amount of guilt that she would hold. And every month, this reminder, still not pregnant. And as the months turn into years, all of their friends start having kids. And it's a reminder, they don't. And as their friends' kids begin to have their first and second and third birthdays, every time there's a birthday celebration, they're reminded we have no children. As these little kids go off to school, they're reminded we're an empty nest and we haven't even started. As these children grow older and have these milestones in life, they continue to pray, God, why won't you bless us with kids? Why can't we have a baby? Why, God? Why? Couldn't you just answer this one question? How hard is this? How difficult could it be for you? And just about the time that their friends' kids start graduating from high school, Rebekah's late one month. Then it's not she's just late, she misses. Could it be? Next month, she starts feeling kind of sick. And while physically she doesn't feel well, emotionally she's ecstatic that this might be the answer to the prayers. And she's pregnant. After praying for this for 20 years, she's pregnant. And we're going to jump ahead a few verses so you can see where it is. Verse 24, when the time came for her to give birth, there were twin boys in her womb. You know what this means? That God is able to do immeasurably more than all we ask or imagine. They just wanted a kid, he doubled up. Give them two. I'll answer their prayer. It's a bonus. So she's pregnant with twins. Now, some of you have been pregnant. I haven't. Some of you have been pregnant, and you remember when you felt that baby move, and it was just like, oh, wonderful. You're telling everybody that we felt the baby move today. And it's just this life inside of you, and you felt the baby move. And then when it kicked, and it was like, oh, the baby kicked. Or, you know, oh, it's got hiccups. It's so cute. All this kind of stuff. Well, Rebekah feels the baby's move too. But it's not just this cute little, oh, got the hiccups. Oh, one of them's got restless leg syndrome, kicking a bunch, whatever. The Bible says they were pretty active. In fact, it would use this word. It says the babies jostled each other within her. The Hebrew word jostle can be translated mixed martial arts. These babies are full on wrestling, roughhousing. It's like the spin cycle in her womb going on. All this stuff's happening. It's not just a little hiccup deal at this point. And look at it. She said, why is this happening to me? To which I would think, did you not pray for 20 years for this? And now wasn't it you who said, God, if you'll give me a kid, I'll never ask for another thing. I'll never be complaining about anything. It'll be the only thing I ever wanted, is it? And you're asking, why is this happening to me? Amongst other things, my back is hurt. My bladder has a reduced capacity. I got stretch marks. I can't get comfortable. My hormones are all over the place. The things that taste good to me, it's bizarre. And now we got my womb as a bouncy house for two rowdy boys. Why is all this happening to me? So she went to inquire of the Lord. You know what that really means? She couldn't sleep. That's what that really means. She's up all night, might as well talk to God about it. God, what's going on? I mean, thanks for the answered prayer and the babies and all that, but what is going on here? This isn't normal. And God explains to her why there's all this activity in her womb. The Lord said to her, 2 nations are in your womb, and 2 peoples from within you will be separated. One people will be stronger than the other, and this is key, and the older will serve the younger. Next slide. When the time came for her to give birth, there were twin boys in her womb. God says, listen, here's what's going on. You're not just pregnant. You've got these beginning of 2 nations within you, and they're already having some conflict, and that's what's going on. So after this 20-year just desperation, and now this 9-month difficult, very active pregnancy, it finally comes time for her to give birth. And it's like, whew, finally, here we go. And so we see this. The first to come, remember there's twins, the first to come out was red, which I identify with. I love that. He's a little red-headed kid, little good little carrot top comes out. The first to come out was red, and his, look at this, whole body was like a hairy garment. Get the picture? Some of you, when your child was born, lots of hair, not like this. This little carpet boy, his whole body was like a hairy garment. Head to toe, red hair, cousin it like this. Here's his baby. You can imagine the midwife delivers it, and Rebecca's, what is it? What is it? Oh, it's a Sasquatch. I don't know. And then it says, so they named him Esau, which translated from the Hebrew is Chewbacca. All right, so yeah, they get a little baby. Okay, so all right, so they got this little hairy baby. Honestly. Okay, sorry. You hate it when your pastor says, now I'm going to tell you the truth. Okay, but now I'm going to tell you the truth. Esau, translated, means hairy. So they named this kid Harry. Where did they come up with that one? Oh, take a look at yourself. Okay. So they name him Harry. So she gives birth to this little red Furby. But that's not all. Remember, there's another one. There's a picture of him right there. There he is. Little Esau, little Harry. Okay. All right. Now, how about his brother? Let's go to his brother. After this, his brother came out with his hand grasping Esau's heel. He's like, well, hold on, bro. You're not going without me. And so he's holding on. He's a little ankle biter from the beginning. So he was named Jacob. Now here's where we saw that this was 20 years later. Isaac was 60 years old when Rebekah gave birth to them. The name Jacob, literally translated, means he grasps the heel. He grasped the heel. If you translate it figuratively, it means deceives or deceiver, which will play out in Jacob's life if you're familiar with his life. The deception thing was a big part of his life in many different instances. Some would say, and this isn't accurate, but some would say this is where we get our little phrase, you're pulling my leg, kind of holding on and deceiving you. That's not accurate, but some people think that. Anyway, I just thought I'd throw that in for fun. So you have these 2 brothers. So here's this red thing, and he's got red hair, which is good, and then his brother. Now, they're obviously not identical twins. They don't look anything alike. In fact, nothing in the human race looks like Esau. So they're not only different in their appearance, but they're different in their abilities, their talents, their demeanor, their character, their likes. Their whole lifestyle is very, very different. So we see as they grow up a little bit about them. It says the boys grew up, and Esau, the hairy one, Esau became a skillful hunter, a man of the open country. Gaston. I mean, he loves to be out there. He's hunting. He's a man's man. He's outside. He's got hair on his forearms and ears and back and such. He's hair. I mean, he's the guy. You know, he's out there, and he's the man versus wild. He's survivor man. While Jacob was a quiet man, staying among the tents. That's a nice way of saying Pinterest. Jacob's at home, do a little scrapbooking. See, here's the deal. Esau had red hair. Jacob would wear this shirt. All right, so that's how it goes. So he's kind of a quiet man, and he's staying home. He's kind of more the Food Network and all those kind of things. He just kind of likes to kind of talk about, what carpets and drapes and the couch and the tent and how does all that and the feng shui of the whole, all that stuff. Okay, so that's him. So not only do you have these two really, really opposite guys, what makes matters worse is their two parents have favorites. They have favorites. So we see this. Isaac, this is dad, and now maybe 15 years later. So Isaac's now maybe 75 years old or so. We're guessing on that. Isaac, who had a taste for wild game, loved Esau. That's my boy. He's out there killing stuff, mending fences, wrestling steers. It's my boy. But Rebekah loved Jacob. Oh, honey, wear a helmet. He's such a sweet boy. So you got these parents who have favorites as well. All right, so once when Jacob was cooking some stew, new recipe he came up with. Okay. He's cooking stew. Esau came in from the open country. He's been out scratching and spitting and burping and carrying on, doing all this stuff, and he comes in famished. Now, this is where we begin to see this Come On Man episode take place. What I want us to do is read through the rest of this event, all in just one reading, and then we're going to come back so you can get it in context, and then we're going to come back and take it apart so we can learn from what happened here, because I think it's very applicable to our lives as well. So you got the picture, these two brothers, exact opposites. One of them's in the kitchen. He's got some stew going. One of them's been out hunting and carrying on in the open country. He comes in hungry, and this is what he says. He said to Jacob, "Quick, let me have some of that red stew. I'm famished." That's why he was also called Edom. Jacob replied, "First, sell me your birthright." Now, I'm using some voice inflection in case you didn't pick up on it, just to kind of help you understand which character we're talking about, because it can be confusing. All right, so, "Look, I'm about to die," Esau said. "What good is a birthright to me?" Jacob said, "Swear it to me first." So he swore an oath to him, selling his birthright to Jacob. Then Jacob gave Esau some bread and some lentil stew. He ate and drank, and then got up and left. So Esau despised his birthright, to which we would say, "Come on, man, what are you thinking?" Now let's go back through this, because it's real easy to see in his life what an idiotic, stupid move he just made. Well, then maybe we can learn some clues from how he made that so that we can avoid similar type deals. Let's go back. He says this. He said to Jacob, "Quick." Now, I'll just say this. Anytime you have to make a very quick decision, like right now, got to know right now, that ought to just immediately put some warning flags up in your mind. Let me ask you a question. From your own experience, from your observation, from the depth of the wealth of your knowledge and wisdom, as a general rule, anytime there's to be some significant, long-lasting, life-altering decision to be made, do you generally make a better decision, either A, impulsively, emotion-driven in the moment, or B, with some reflection, some good insight, maybe some time to think it through? Which is it? B. Some of you are saying, "Well, I don't know." No, it's B. B. Generally, this whole thing, we got to make a decision, or here's this idea, we got to do this now, got to sign now, you're going to miss it. Too good to be true? It probably is. I mean, some of you know, 3 a.m. in a dorm room with a bunch of guys, "I got an idea." Usually a bad idea. Some of you know that millions of dollars have been spent to remove tattoos. because it seemed like a good idea at the time. Did you know in the state of Washington, if you want to get married legally, you have to go to the courthouse and get a marriage license. And there is a mandatory 3-day wait on that marriage license before it's valid. There's a reason for that. Because I guess the state of Washington believes that maybe within the next 3 days, at least you'll sober up enough to make a wise decision. Or maybe in these next 3 days, you'll wake up in the middle of the night with a cold sweat saying, what am I thinking? Or maybe someone in your life would have enough wherewithal to say, you can't go through with this in the next 3 days. Just slow down a little bit. You're talking about a life-altering decision. Slow down just a little bit. You see, the first thing here that we can learn from Esau is this quick, impulsive, emotion-driven decision will usually end up with a come on, man response. How much debt? How many deals? How many reactions? How many words? How many things have we done quick? He says, quick. Let me have some of that red stew. I'm famished. And here we see the second clue. What leads him down this come on, man experience road is because he doesn't just say, hey, I'm hungry. I have a need for some food. He has taken the whole moment and exaggerated it. It's not just a bowl of soup. He makes it bigger. Because he says, hey, give me some of that, what? Red stew. You see what happened there? It's not just stew. He's like a bug that's being sucked into a blue light, but this time it's red stew. Give me some of that red stew. And he sees it there in the pot, bubbling and simmering, red and savory, smelling so good. I need some of that red stew. I'm famished. Not hungry. Famished. Later he'll say, I'm dying. You see what he does? He exaggerates it. He exaggerates his want. He exaggerates his desire, and he makes it a need. And the fulfillment of that need is right before him. And he focuses in, and it's all about the red stew, and it's all about his famished need. And here's the truth on this. Because his great desire now, everything else goes away. It's all about satisfying an appetite. When our appetites become our focus, our perspectives get fuzzy. You can write that down, it's not in your notes. But when our appetites become our focus, our perspectives get fuzzy. He's not thinking about anything else. He's not thinking about tomorrow. He's not thinking about his future. He's not thinking about anything except his wants, his needs, his desires, his lust, his appetite, and how that can be fulfilled right now. Right now. You know, when somebody has something that somebody else wants, the person who has whatever this is, and it doesn't matter what it is, they have the power in that exchange, in that interchange, in that relationship at that point. And if the person who has something knows that the other person wants it really bad, they can leverage that, they can use that, they can lean into that because they've got the control. And this person who wants that so bad is the one that is so easily ruled and controlled. Now, quite a few years ago, there was an example of this, some of you will remember this, of someone who wanted something and someone who had something to give or to take away. Let's watch this.
Medium turkey chili.
Medium crab bisque.
I didn't get any bread.
Just forget it, let it go.
Excuse me, I think you forgot my bread.
Bread, $2 extra.
$2, but everyone in front of me got free bread.
You want bread?
Yes, please.
$3! What? No soup for you.
No soup for you. He's got something and he's got the control. In this story, Esau comes in and he says, I'm famished, I want some of that. And Jacob says, no soup for you. He's got the control, he's got the power, he's got the one that he's calling the shots. And he knows it. And he knows that he can leverage this for his advantage. And he does. That's what he says. Jacob replied, "First sell me your birthright." These are brothers. These guys have been negotiating, trading, selling, trying to trick each other their whole lives. But birthright? Come on. I mean, how about my favorite marble? How about my allowance for a month? How about my Griffey Jr. rookie card? Birthright? I mean, he swings for the fence on this one. So we don't understand exactly what that means in our culture. For them, birthright was the inheritance of property, name, and lineage. It meant everything. There was incredible benefits to being the firstborn son. Because the firstborn son would always get a double portion of inheritance. If a father had 5 sons, at the end of his life, when he divides up his possessions, his belongings, his wealth, he would divide it into 6 parts, and the oldest son would get 2. A big financial gain for being the firstborn son in that culture. And not only that, but he would become the patriarch of the family. He would be the one that would have the authority. He would be the one that would have it would be from his family and his line that the lineage would go on. He would be the one that would have the honor. This birthright was a huge thing. To give that up meant to give up the future financially for him and his family, meant to give up a place of leadership in the family, gave up the possibility of having a huge impact. This was an enormous price tag. And Esau and Jacob, they've known each other their whole lives. And Esau, he comes back, and I think maybe his response is a little bit trying to manipulate himself. He says this, "Look, I'm about to die. And maybe he knows my brother's a little more sensitive than I am. I'm gonna pull on those heartstrings. I'm gonna say, come on, Jacob, look at me. I'm near death. I'm like your only brother. Brothers don't kill each other. Brothers share soup. I'm about to die." And then he goes, what good is the birthright to me? I'm like, if I'm dead, it's all yours anyway. So what good is it? And I wonder, having had siblings myself, having had children myself, I wonder if what's going on here is this little play where Esau knows if he can kind of trick him into giving him the soup, it's the best of both worlds for him. That he gives him the soup, and then Jacob says, "Give me your birthright." He says, "No." So, "But you said," "No, I didn't." "Yes, you did." "No, I didn't." "Yes, you did." "No, I didn't." "I did not. I asked a question. I never said you could have it. I just simply asked, what good is birth?" It was just simply a question. I was just seeing what your opinion was. Now, maybe not, but that's how we operated in our household with our kids. Not really our kids, but when I was a kid. So there's that going on. Jacob's no dummy. Jacob has known this guy since they were roommates. For his whole life, he's been with his. So look at how he responds. He says this. Jacob said, "Swear to me first. Don't ask me questions. Don't try and trick me. Swear to me first." So he swore an oath to him, selling his birthright, his double portion of inheritance, his family name, his patriarch standing someday, the honor, the authority, selling his birthright to Jacob. To which again we say, well, come on, man. This is the most expensive meal he will ever buy. It will cost him and his children and their children money. It will cost them influence. It will cost them impact. The price that he paid is unthinkable how high it is. Deal's done. Jacob follows through. So Jacob gave Esau some bread and some lentil stew. And he ate, and I can imagine while he's eating, he's thinking, that kid brother of mine, for a mama's boy, he makes some incredible food. And he ate, and he drank, and he probably ate some more and drank some more, and it hit the spot, and his appetite was fully satisfied. He is satiated. He's had all he can eat, all he can drink, bread, lentil soup, the whole deal. And then this is where it gets sad, and then got up and left. It's over. It's done. He walks away from the table, and tomorrow he'll be hungry again. And tomorrow everything he just purchased will be at the bottom of an outhouse. And for the rest of his life, he gave up his birthright. Look at his own response. So Esau despised his birthright. I think Esau despised himself. I think he goes away from that table kicking himself. What was I thinking? What was I thinking? I'm so stupid. That was so dumb. I don't like me. I don't like Jacob. I don't like my dad. I don't like this whole system. I don't like him. He despises it all because he gave up his birthright. There's a phrase found throughout the pages of Scripture. There's a phrase that God uses to identify himself. And if you grew up in church world, familiar with the Bible, you've heard this phrase. Jesus even uses this phrase to identify God. It says in Matthew, Jesus said, "Have you not read what God said to you? I am the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob." How many of you ever heard that? God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Ever heard that phrase? Okay, it's pretty common in Bible stuff. The God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Abraham, that's the one that God chose to start this whole thing off. And his covenant son, not Ishmael, but Isaac. Now, if all things would have been normal, the next one in that progression should have been Esau. He's the oldest son. In fact, he's Isaac's favorite. But Esau sold that privilege for a bowl of beans. And could it be that had he had the foresight and the wherewithal to not make that come on man experience happen, could it be that our Bible would have read something like this: I am the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Esau? Could it be that that would be what would be normal, because that's how it should have gone? And you can get into, well, but this was God's plan all along, and I don't want to get into the providence of God and the sovereignty of God, which I believe in, and man's free will. That's a different sermon, different discussion. But here's the truth about Esau: that he sacrificed a future by satisfying an appetite. This we need to see. This we need to understand. He sacrificed his future to satisfy an appetite. He sacrificed what would happen for decades, for generations, to satisfy something that would take place in just a matter of moments. He made a decision with a stopwatch, but the consequences were measured with a calendar. Here's kind of a cool little side note on this one. There was a time when Jesus was out in the open country for 40 days, and he was very hungry too. And he had the opportunity, the same choice Esau did. He had the opportunity to sell out his future to satisfy his appetite, and he could see beyond. He didn't get so focused in on his appetite that he missed what God had in mind for him. See, it doesn't have to be that way. We don't have to follow Esau's example. 2,500 years later or so, the writer of Hebrews points back to this come on man experience. And he writes this: "See that no one is sexually immoral." And I find it interesting that he highlights that one amongst other sins. "See that no one is sexually immoral or is godless like Esau, who for a single meal sold his inheritance rights as the oldest son. Afterwards, as you know, when he wanted to inherit this blessing, he was rejected. Even though he sought the blessing with tears, he could not change what he had done." You see that? Years later, and the meal's gone a day later, but years later, he's still filled with tears of remorse, still filled with tears of regret, still paying the consequences of a decision that he made that looked like it was an isolated case, looked like it was just in the moment, but it's still affecting him years and years later, and there's not a thing he can do to change it. Yeah, I said that if we looked at all the come on man experiences out of the Bible, we'd be doing this for many, many months. I wonder, when the writer of Hebrews isolated that sexual immorality deal, I wonder if he had in his mind, I don't know this, but I just wonder if he had in mind another come on man experience that happened by the man after God's own heart. The one who wrote Psalms, the great warrior, the king of Israel, who in a moment to satisfy an appetite made a costly come on man a mistake. Committed adultery with Bathsheba, had her husband murdered in cold blood, lied to try and cover it up. And when he's finally called out on this one, look at what Scripture says, what Nathan says. That Nathan said to David, you are the man. This is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. Look at this. I anointed you king over Israel, and I delivered you from the hand of Saul. I gave your master's house to you, and your master's wives into your arms. I gave you the house of Israel and Judah. And if all this had been too little, I would have given you even more. You see what God's saying? David, I blessed you incredibly. But you sacrificed some of the blessings I had for you. The life that I gave to you is amazing. But if you could see what it could have been, I would have blessed you even more. Why did you despise the word of the Lord by doing what is evil in his eyes? Why? What I had, the plan, the dream I had for you, the life I had for you. But no, you had to satisfy your appetite and go against my will. Now, some of you might be saying, well, Bob, are you saying God won't forgive? Hear me very clearly on this. Forgiveness is not the issue we're talking about here. In this whole series, we're not talking about will God forgive. Of course, God will forgive. He always forgives. God is the forgiver. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the price that we pay, the consequences that we bear, the pain that we bring upon ourselves and others. We're talking about sacrificing the plans that maybe we even had for our own life or that God had. Talk about sacrificing hopes, dreams, sacrificing integrity, respect, sacrificing marriages and homes and families, sacrificing careers, sacrificing impact, sacrificing blessings, sacrificing a future. To sacrifice a future to satisfy an appetite. And yet, if we're honest and we look in our own lives, there are consequences some of us still live with every single day. We've been forgiven. God forgives Esau. Esau and Jacob actually get reconciled toward the end of their life. They get forgiveness for each other. But the consequences, they continue on. They continue on. I want to get really practical for us here today. Because we can see it in Esau so easily. But here's what I would encourage you to do. Whenever there's a temptation, an opportunity, a situation where you're just really at least telling yourself you're not sure if this is a good thing or not, that you're wondering if this is going to maybe sacrifice now a future. If you would have people in your life that you trust enough, people with a discerning spirit that you trust enough, that you could just go to them and say, here's this opportunity, here's this relationship, and I know he's not my husband, but you know, it's just going to be just, or here's this business deal, and I know it's a little bit shady, but I think everyone does, and here's this opportunity here, and here's this decision I'm thinking about. If you would just go to someone and say, here's what I'm facing, tell me, is it chilly? And they'll look at you like, what are you talking about? And just point them to the podcast and tell them to listen to the sermon. And say, is this just something that might look good for right now, might even satisfy right now, but in the end is going to cost me a whole lot more than I'm willing to pay? And maybe when we're in those situations, when there's a temptation, when there's a lust, when there's some allurement, when there's some covetous deal where we're going to do this thing for whatever reason, whatever situation, if we would have the courage to look at that thing, that decision, that deal, that amount of money, that relationship, whatever, to look it straight in the face and out loud just say these words, you're just chilly. In fact, say that line with me. You're just chilly. So here's this deal, and she's so cute, or he's so handsome, and he knows, he understands, and he speaks my language, and he understands my heart. You look at him, and you say, you're just chilly. Now, I guarantee you, it's not the best pickup line. He might even be stag chilly, but he's just chilly. Doesn't matter how good he looks. Doesn't matter how good he smells. Doesn't matter how much he's going to fulfill you. If it's just chili, he's going to give you gas and steal your future. You look at that business deal and say, you're just chili. You look at that amount of money and say, you're just chili. And don't do it. Don't sacrifice your future to fulfill your appetite. It's my desire for me and for every one of us is that for the remainder of our days, we'd have less and less and less of this buyer's remorse. We would avoid the buyer's remorse. Why did I do that? The price tag was way too high. I tell you, as a pastor, how many times I've sat with men, grown men, crying, telling me their story to fulfill an appetite, the price that they paid, how angry they are at themselves, how they wish they could go back and do it differently, how they'd do anything to have their wife back, their family back, their career back, their integrity back, their respect back, their impact back, their ministry back. It's too late. Yeah, God will forgive. That's not even the issue. It's not the issue. It's the price that we pay. On a spiritual level, Paul writes to a group of Christians in Corinth, and he says this, so we fix our eyes not on what is seen, but what is unseen. For what is seen is temporary. What is unseen is eternal. To not be sucked in and have our focus on the here and now and our appetites, and then lose the perspective of the life that God has for us. Less, come on, man, and more future that God has. Stand, we're going to sing, and then I'll close this in prayer.